Welcome to the Blackburn End Podcast. We're doing a little bit of a special one this week. It's our 40th episode. We've decided to go live because we've got the retained list. I wasn't necessarily expecting to talk about this today. I didn't think everything would be there waiting for us. But here we are. So, Mark, it's good to see you. Did you have a good weekend?
Well, for the weekend, it was what I did realise, though, Mike, which I should have already known, is in Lancashire. It is God's country. Obviously, the weather's been amazing in Lancashire. We've not seen a drop of rain for years. The sun's beaming down, as people saw the other week when I looked like I was in prison. I travelled in my shorts and T-shirt, which I haven't really come out of for weeks. He says wearing a hoodie now. But I travelled in my shorts and T-shirt, 45 minutes over the border to over there is a similar looking place, but not as nice. Went to Ripon Races. It was honestly 8-9 degrees less, windy, bordering on a bit of a shower, full of dingles as well. So other than that, lovely weekend.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, it was quite nice round us. I managed to get a bit of a tan on my bald head. Nice. Even it all out. So that was nice. And then we've had to work today.
We've had a big event over the weekend, Mike.
Yes, so as people know, I coach quite a bit at the moment. I'm doing my UEFA badges, and which has meant I haven't been able to see Rovers as often as I'd like to. But we managed to win our county cup yesterday, our under-10s, 2-0, clean sheet, bossed the game. It was very much a Rovers performance, winning trophies, it's what I'm used to as a football fan. But no, really proud of the lads. They did absolutely everything. I messaged you yesterday just saying I was a bit worried about today because I'd lost my voice. But it's recovered nicely. But yeah, really chuffed because, you put a lot of effort into coaching, but they put so much effort in themselves as lads, and to see them win was brilliant. And to have the disappointment of missing out on playoffs for the Rovers, obviously it's nice to now lift a trophy. So that was good. So thanks for that. Yeah. Should we talk about Rovers then? So how was it without Rovers for a weekend? Did you feel lost, or was it quite nice to be without it just for that one weekend?
I felt okay because I watched the FA Cup final and I felt like Rovers were in it. There was a small part of me, I was all in. It's like, come on, Adam. What? I was so disappointed he didn't get to take part in the presentation and the celebrations. Felt sorry for him, but I am sorry that boy's going to the top, so he'll have plenty more presentations and celebrations in him, I think.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I was a bit annoyed today because a Villa fan came into my office and I was chatting to him. I was fixing his laptop because I fix laptops for a living. Anyway, and he comes in and he's there saying, "Did you watch the FA Cup final?" I was like, "Yeah, I watched it." And he was like, "Tell you what, that Adam Wharton's good, isn't he?" I was like, "Yeah," and he knows I'm a Blackburn fan. And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like talking to me like I didn't know him, and I said, "Oh, do you know where he came from?" He was like, "Well, he came through Palace's youth system." I was triggered.
No,
I was so triggered. To the point where I was going to throw his laptop back at him and say,
"No, I should have done. You should have done."
I said, "Mate, we was robbed of like 20 odd million with some add-ons," and he was like, "Oh no, I thought he came through their youth system." I was fuming. But no, it was great to see Palace win. It shows that clubs that, it wasn't long ago before they were in pretty dire situation. And, they've done things right. They've built up and they've gone and got some young English talent. And, look where they are now, lifting trophies. Can it be us, though?
Not next season. Well, maybe next season. Next season. I'm sorry. I'll start again. Yes, Mike. Of course it can. Next season.
Exactly. And talking about next season now, we're going to start building a squad, hopefully. And it starts today with the retain list. So the first thing is the 1-year options that were activated. So there was only 4 players on this list. We'll get to the main one at the end, but we've had Adam Khan, Zach Stritch and Harrison Wood. Now, how much do you know about those 3 as far as players?
I know Adam Khan's had a very strange loan, and I believe he's featured for at international level in the youth teams. Zach Strick, I've seen a little bit of, but Harrison Wood's the one that I'm a little bit more familiar with. He's had a couple of loans, really strange loans, but up in Scotland and done okay. Quite highly rated, been in and around the first team. I think he was involved in last pre-season. So I fully expect him to come back and be in and around pre-season. I think he's one of them that's now got to do it. Adam Card's a young keeper, so he's probably got a bit longer. But Zach Strick, again, seems to be a regular in the 21s, but never seems to be getting a mention in the matchday squad or on the bench or anything. But yeah, I think they obviously just want another year to look at them. I think Harrison Wood's had a few injuries as well, so that's probably played into that one.
Yeah, I mean, he was a highly rated player, so I think it's just having another look at him. And I'm guessing he's not going to be on a hell of a lot of money. So to retain him and get him signed on for one more year is going to be the chance for him to shine. I think if you go straight out on loan, it's a little bit, the loan's got to be a right loan, hasn't it, for him?
Absolutely.
But then you've got my man Ryan Hedges. So this one's quite split in the fan base. There's quite a few people saying, I wouldn't have activated it or anything like that. I think he's turning into quite a solid squad player. He's someone that can come on. He can affect games when he wants to. We said that actually last week, that as far as injuries are concerned, he had a pretty decent season. He didn't get as many injuries as he normally would, and he got more minutes than he normally would. Do you think it's a sensible one-year activation?
Yeah, I think the money it would cost to replace somebody like Ryan Hedges, you know what you're getting from him. I think it's absolutely sensible. Yeah. Like you said, I don't expect him to start every week, and I think we will be looking to improve on him. But I think we know what he does, and I think he does a decent job. And having him in and around that squad, I think, he's quite an experienced player now. I think it's a wise move. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And we've obviously now offered some new contracts. So the new contracts are to Danny Batth, Jake Batty, Tyrhys Dolan, Felix Goddard, Lorenz Malarkey, Matthews, and Andy Vyman, your boy. Andy Vyman, talk to me about this one, because obviously the Andy Vyman thing is, like you said, all last season, if you had someone one-on-one, it was him. Then towards the end of the season, when he was injured, we said we was missing his experience and his maturity. Is it a sensible thing to get him signed on?
Well, if he agrees, we've offered him a deal, haven't we? I'm sure he'll have interest around. I think the thing with Vyman is he's got quality that if you were to sign in somebody starting all the time, we wouldn't be able to afford it. I think he's got that bit of quality. He's got the experience. And he's somebody who, we saw it against Norwich. We brought him on when we needed a goal. The ball drops to him and he's usually in the right place. He will score. And I think, he's captained his past teams, hasn't he? He's been at West Brom. He's been in and around the playoffs. I just think that experience is really important. And one thing I worried about going into this summer was the talk of, we're going back to what we were doing before. We're going down the data-driven model, the fit, young, hungry players. I was worried that we'd go and do what Thomason used to complain about and not have the experience. So the fact was trying to secure him, and the same with, obviously we'll come on to him in a second, but Danny Batth, I think massive news that,
Yeah, and we don't know what direction this club's going in. Everything's up in the air again. We're talking rebuilds and things like that. I mean, the talk of the rebuild's been coming since Ishmael came. How do we pronounce his name? Because we've been called out for that. Ismail.
Yeah, there's no H. Ismail. So it's Ismail. We'll keep trying with that
Ismail. One. Right. Yeah, it's the same with my mate Augustus. So yeah, but so when it comes to these players, it's very difficult for us to see where we're going and what kind of players we want to come in, because the manager now is apparently wanting these fast young players that are, high energy, high intensity, and our squad isn't like that. So you can expect quite a bit of a turnover, because if your squad's not really, designed to have those kind of tactics, you do need to have a turnover. So to have only these players being off a contract doesn't really, shock me. But Andy Vyman is someone, like you say, very experienced and can offer something off the bench. Danny Batth came in, did way more than we thought he would, played way more minutes than we thought he would, and was way more important than we thought he'd be. So he's someone that is very. He seems very comfortable at the club. He seems very happy, and everyone's comfortable around him. We said that Hyam upped his game when he was next to him as well. Do you think Danny Bart's one of these now that he could fall off maybe next season, or do you expect him really to stay at the kind of level he's at now?
I think they will probably look at their own depth chart and see him as maybe second, third choice. However, I think they'd be ridiculous to do so without getting him back re-signed. I think how important he was and how I formed it, and the key bit is what you've just said, Mike. I think both Hayden Carter and Dom Hyam were both better alongside him. So, absolute no-brainer to get him re-signed if we can agree that with him.
Definitely. And to be fair, these are offered new contracts. They might not sign them. But I would expect Danny Bart to sign. I would expect Andy Vyman to sign, because I don't expect anyone, any clubs above us to really go for those two players. So I do kind of expect them to sign. Now, there are some now that they might not sign. One of obviously is Jake Batty, who was quite highly rated at the club, and he just seems to have come away and playing left back, because that is his primary position. When he went out on loan, was he playing left back or was it left centre back?
No, Stanley alternated between a 5-3-2 and then 4 in midfield, really, and he played left wing or left wing back most of the time. So I think the thing with Jake Batty is he's been mentioned in and around the first team for a while now, but you forget he's only just gone 20. So he went 20 in April. He played 25 games in League Two. He played 1 in the FA Cup, 3 in the AFL Trophy. When he's been fit, he's played, is the big thing, but predominantly on that left-hand side of midfield. When I've spoke to Stanley fans about him, they've said that his defensive side of his game could do with improving. But to be fair, at 23 years old, we said that about Owen Beck. We said probably going forward was his biggest strength. I don't think we criticised his defending, but that's quite normal. He's had quite an injury hit time as Jake Batty, but again, quite normal when all of a sudden you're expected to try and play 3 games in a week. So I actually think I'm a little bit concerned that he's not signed. Same with Barton and Vyman, to be fair. They should be quite straightforward, I think. If we wanted them, they should have been, agreed and done. So the fact that we've only offered them a new deal, I take Barton Vyman slightly differently, because I think that is what it is. But Jake Batty, and somebody we'll come on to in a minute, there is always the element, as when we had the interview with Conor Mahoney, that the rules state that you only get compensation for a player under 24 if you offer them a deal. So in the back of my mind, if you're Jake Batty, surely you're going to sign another deal at Blackburn if they really want you. Maybe they've left it late, I don't know. But I just have in the back of my mind, why has he not signed that new deal? Why is it just an offered new deal? Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but yeah.
No, I completely get what you're saying there, because he's the kind of player where if a contract's on the table, it's probably going to get signed because it's going to be more than what he was on. And the fact that we've got a few left backs now and we've got people that can play left back, he's not really going to come in and play first team football for us. So he's one that might be out the door at some point. I'd love to see him play. I'd like to see him, but if it's waiting and seeing. 2 more there: Felix Goddard and Lorenz Malarkey Matthews. Felix Goddard, I haven't seen him play at all, but I've heard that this Malarkey Matthews is meant to be someone that we're quite excited about.
Yeah, Felix Goddard I've seen a couple of times. He's had a loan down in the lower leagues. They seem to do that with the keepers in particular, try and toughen them up a bit. Again, though, Malarkey Matthews, highly rated. Why has he not signed a new deal? All the other scholars have signed the deals that have been offered, because otherwise they would have been on this list. So, yeah, alarm bells are ringing a little bit, I'll be honest.
And before we do talk about the ones that them scholars, that we've got one last player, and that is Tyrhys Dolan. So I'm hearing rumours today off some people on X saying that this is just an empty last offer. He's not going to sign. I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think I've made my peace that he's going to leave. I think there was times this season where I was very disappointed with his production, and there was other times where I was like, this is what I want from you every single week. And the fan base was split at times, but by the end of the season, I think most of us were saying, I'll just sign a deal because there's something definitely there. And you was a very, very big part in the fact that we made that last push for promotion, for the playoffs. Where do you think Tyrhys Dolan's going to be next year?
I agree. I don't think he's going to be here. I think like you made peace with that. My biggest concern now is that he doesn't end up in Scotland or abroad, because that will massively reduce, if not completely eradicate, any compensation. Losing Tyrese Dolan is one thing. Losing Tyrese Dolan and not getting circa £2 million, let's say, on compensation is a big problem.
He's got SPL written all over him at the moment, just because it'll really annoy us because we won't get that compensation. But I'm hearing rumours that he's linked to Blues. I mean, Blues are coming up and they're being linked to, Jesus today, Gabriel Jesus, which is crazy. Right. But you've got some clubs coming up that want to spend some money and solidify themselves into the Championship. And I think he's probably the perfect player that would go into those kind of teams and actually better them. I've had a lot of Blues fans ask me about him, and apparently he's very strongly linked there. So I can't see him going into the Premier League. I think he'll stay in the Championship, and I think he'll go for a team that's pushing for promotion. And you could argue that Blues is going to be one of those, or a club that's in transition to trying to be pushing for promotion. But I do worry about the SPL links, because someone like him would just go and boss the SPL. I mean, it's absolute farmers league.
Well, yeah. I do think Premier League clubs might look at this as a very, very low risk, high reward gamble, though. I could see something like a Bournemouth coming in thinking, do you know what, we'll stick him on a 3-year deal. Even if we loan him back to the Championship, what's the worst case scenario? They're going to get a couple of million back for him. So I just think I could see that equally. But you're right. He won't be on massive wages. All right, if you start getting the likes of Birmingham and Wrexham, who will be throwing their money around, who also, to be fair, have bought, particularly Wrexham, if you look at their model, if you reports are to be believed in League Two, I think their budget, their accounts came out and they brought in, it might be turnover, it might be income, I can't remember which one it was, but was the same as ours in the Championship. Then they've been in League One, so it's going to have gone up. So the Championship, they're going to be bringing in even more. So they're going to have a bigger budget than us, and they've brought in experienced players before. If you look at their pattern, they are bringing in experienced players who are at a lower level. Stephen Fletcher, obviously Paul Mullen, really quite famously now. But could they go and bring Danny Barton? Yeah, I could see that. So that's a bit of a worry in that sense. But Dolan's the big worry, is the compensation for me now. I think he's definitely out the door. Yeah, Ollie Johnson, that's it. The ironic thing is he's spent more time in the English Football League since then, hasn't he? So had he gone to, what would we have got for Diaz? 4 million? Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, like Callum's saying here, is it really a problem with compensation if we don't reinvest sales money regardless? I think for me, it's a principle of it. I just want to know that I've got something for him. I mean, he owes us nothing. He came for free. He gave us a lot of games. He got us a lot of goals. He got us assists, and he was a big player at times. And that's fantastic. It's just, when we started talking about the Broughton era in the project, and he was talking about making sure players were signed on, this was one of the players which you would just hope would get signed on before his value went too high. And I do push people to look at our Conor Mahoney interview, because he does talk about this, and he mentions the same people that are there dealing with the Dolan contract. And he says, the closer it got to the end, it actually got to a point where he was playing more, being more productive in the team. So we started asking for more money later on, which you would, if you're a player and you're being more productive. So if you got the deal done early, you would have signed for much less. And I can imagine Dolan being the same. he came away and they might have said, well, you're not actually performing, so we're not going to offer you the deal. But then he started performing again. And then we might have offered him something. It's like, well, no, I think I'm worth more now. And I've now got people knocking on the door. And my agent's telling me that all these foreign clubs, are potentially looking at me, which is potential. It's going to get his head turned. So I think we're all agreed that Dolan won't be with us next year, but there is obviously quite a few that definitely won't be with us next year. The leaving the club list is quite long. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's quite a few. So one of them is our reserve keeper Jordan Eastham. He's on his way. But like we said, we had that Khan sign. So is he going to step up, or is it going to be something that we look for another keeper? Because normally you do have 3 goalkeepers. But we have got some young keepers as well. You've got there's another name I can't pronounce. Mikuleski. Is that his name?
I think it's Michalski, but yeah, don't quote me on it.
I used to be really good, right, at pronouncing player names. And then suddenly, when I've got hit 40 odd, I'm like turned into my mum and dad where I can't pronounce any names whatsoever. It's a joke. But anyway, Adam Forshaw, he's the next one. We're going in alphabetical order. Adam Forshaw. There's a few people actually saying that they would have kept him on, but I think the majority are just like, thank you for your time. Enjoy your next contract elsewhere.
I think I'd have been tempted to do it. I think you know what you're going to get from him. Ismail particularly seemed to quite like bringing him on latterly in the games if we were winning. I can't imagine his own fortunes. We've talked about his experience before. Yes, he doesn't fit the mould of mobility and things, but I just think for a low cost, low risk, you know what you're going to get signing. I think I'd have done that. But I think it does tell us that the direction they're going in, and hopefully it means that they're going to bring a midfielder in that's pushing the starting 2.
And this is it. It's really hard. Like I said earlier, it's really hard to look at these retained lists and leaving the club list and judge it because you don't know what's happening after this. They have a plan. Hopefully they have a plan. They have some players that they might have got some pre-agreements with that they're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So it could be that they're just like, you know what? We know that we can get another Adam Forshaw. So if he goes, there's someone else that can take his spot.
And you've also got to remember, we had to kick Arne Sigurdsson out because we filled our 25-man squad. So we had a big squad, didn't we?
Exactly. Next one on the list, Patrick Gamble. He was someone that we thought might step up and start to play a bit more, but it hasn't worked out for him, has it?
No, he's had a loan at was it Fylde he went to and didn't really feature. And I think when you're an academy player who's playing regularly in the 21s, you've kind of nailed that level. If you're going on loan, you've got to nail down a position somewhere and start regularly and look pretty impressive, haven't you? And it would appear he's not done that. Like I say, I can't speak from experience. I've not seen him down there, but all the stats say he's barely played, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the next one on the list was someone that I think everyone is heartbroken that it hasn't worked out for, and that's Zach Gilsenan. Someone that we mentioned even back in the Rovers chat days as someone that we was excited about seeing. We mentioned him a couple of times as the next youth player to make his first team debut and maybe explode onto the scene. Mika Richards' style. I think we was all expecting quite a bit, but injuries just didn't work out. And even on his birthday, it was announced that he wasn't going to be coming back, which was a shame. I'm gutted for the lad because he had a lot of talent, and I hope his career is not going to take a downturn here.
I'm a little surprised by it. Obviously, you don't know the ins and outs. You don't know what he was asking for. You don't know what the club were prepared to offer. And as we've seen with recent events, I think the women's team was costing the club about $100,000 a year. So if he's on $2,000 a week, this is really quick maths. That's another $100,000. So maybe they can't justify doing that anymore. But I would have liked to have seen him given a year. Maybe he wouldn't have secured a contract here, but maybe he would have elsewhere. Bring him in pre-season, get him fit. I would like to think that they're still going to do that if he can't secure another club. But, yeah, shame.
Yeah, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it is a shame because he was an exciting player. Another player that it's not necessarily worked out for is Markanday. He just didn't quite hit the heights that we needed him to, but I'm a bit shocked at this one. I genuinely thought he would be a player that we would want just in and around the squad, maybe offer something for the year. But it could be that he just gave all the signs and saying, look, unless I'm playing first team football, then I'm going to go. And the club might have just said, you know what, there's no space for you. Like you said, we've only got so many spots in the squad. And it might be that, it's just not working out. But it seemed to be that he showed these glimpses that it would work. And wasn't he top goal scorer in the League Cup or something for us a couple of years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a shame that it hasn't worked out because I think we was all quite excited about him.
Absolutely. And then he did his hamstring, was it a couple of minutes into his debut, didn't he? I think there's two things with Markanday. He's 24 in August. He's gone on 2 loans this year. He had a successful one in League Two. I still didn't get the logic in sending him to League Two. I think he was in and around our first team. He has to go to League One at the lowest level. He ripped it up a little bit in League Two for Chesterfield, played 22 games, 6 goals, 3 assists. Then went to League One to a team pushing for playoffs who ended up getting in and around the playoffs, didn't they? With Stockport, they played in the playoffs the other day, but struggled to nail down a place all the time. The Lincoln fans were saying that he was not physical enough, not strong enough, and they have better options. That's quite damning, really. But the other thing is, you've got to remember he's come from Tottenham, albeit for, I think it was reported, was it around £1 million? But he's come from Tottenham. I remember in the Ashley Phillips days when they were talking of him leaving, they were saying that people in Tottenham's dressing room, he sat alongside them at England youth team, and they're on as much as our top earner. So Markanday, you would imagine, isn't come on pittance either. So maybe that's had something to do with it. I don't know. But I think at 24, he should be coming and establishing himself in our team. What I would say on the flip side of that is I think he would have contributed as much as Cozy Dewberry did last season had he been with us all season.
That goes into the whole loan, do you develop someone else's youth or your own? And I completely agree. But you don't know because Cozy Dewberry, he could have just absolutely exploded and had a fantastic season. You just don't know. And it was a risk that we took. But I was surprised that Markanday, didn't have an opportunity last year to really stick around. But that's football. Next one on the list that was kind of first team ready was Jack Vale. I remember talking about him being the next Sam Gallagher. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But Jack Vale, we knew that it was going to come to a point where he was going to just be let go. I think we expected it more last year than this year. It's just not worked out for him at the club, has it?
No, not at all. I mean, I've looked at his stats on loan. He's barely played this year. He's gone back to Motherwell. He is... I mean, we renewed him last year, didn't we, in the hope that he would manage to do it. He's played 6 games in the Scottish Premiership this year, no goals. He got an injury relatively early on in the season and then got another quite bad one. So he's not played. And that's been the story of his Rovers career, hasn't it? He's not played enough games, but mainly through injury. When he has played, I've not been convinced by him either. I think he did all right in Scotland. If I'm being honest, I think we've sent him there in the hope of maybe picking up a small fee or a percentage sell on, and it's just not worked for the lad.
No, I worry about his career. If you go up to Scotland as a striker and you're not getting a few goals here or there, I think you've got to worry a little bit. He seems like a good lad, but he's been a name that I've just been hearing about for the last few years, and it's just not really happened. I mean, he got a goal against Norwich. He showed a couple of glimpses here or there, and just nothing really happened. So it's just clear. This leaving the club list just says to me it's just letting the people go that are either dead wood or they're just not going to make it, and he's one of them. The last one on the list for me that was knocking on the first team door was Isaac Whitehall. I heard that he was a prospect at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had bad injuries, didn't he? Came back and the club I think the club renewed him while he was injured actually last year. Big bad injuries again. Came back, managed to play again when I think there was a worry about that. Not surprised, really. I think the only other one I would talk about is Jaleel Saidi. Really strange one. Had a loan in Greece, Cyprus, this year. In Cyprus it was. Playing in their Super League and has played. So it's a strange one that he's fully left, but obviously he wouldn't get compensation. But yeah, I think those on the released list there are predominantly players that have been in and around the 21s, have outgrown the 21s, but have never made the step up. So at some point, to be fair to them as well, you've got to let them go, haven't you?
Yeah, my feeling's always been, and this just shows where football's gone. If you're between the ages of 20 and 22, if you're not getting some first team football at the club, then or very close, and people are saying, you know, you're going to get some cup games, you're going to get this, that, and the other. We haven't got the budget, we haven't got the space to keep them on. You know, you've just got to let them go. And you know, you're looking at some of these players that have been in and around. If, you know, the ages that they're at, we haven't got the time, we haven't got the budget to hold on to them. So you've got to be brutal. It's a brutal game. And if we are looking to build, and there is a rebuild happening, you need to make space for it. So there's no one on this release list that I'm really upset about from a footballing point of view. Other than Zach Gilsenan, I think everyone else I can kind of, you know, just make my peace with and just say, yeah, thank you, see you later, all the best. I just feel like the Gilsenan's the one on that list where I'm just like, just ashamed, because I just felt like there was a bit of a buzz about him, and from what I'd seen, he just seemed that talent. Was there any other names on there? Because obviously Tom Bloxham was someone that we brought in as well. I don't know much about the lad, you know, but is there anyone else on that list you were really concerned about?
Not really. I think Stephen Edmondson, obviously, is your older brother James, who's been on loan at Macclesfield and done really well. He came back and got in the 21s and scored a screamer in the last game against Fulham. But the reports in the background were that Stephen was the better of the two brothers, the younger brother. But obviously not. I always think that must be a really awkward family meal at the next one when one's got a deal and one hasn't. But yes.
Yeah, I just want to talk about Steve Beaumont's comment there about Zach definitely deserved another year. It's not been uncommon for us to actually sign a player for another year when they've been injured. No. Do you think that I don't want to keep going on about Zach Gilsenan because, you know, he's history for the club now, isn't it? You know, I know it's harsh, but we've given players a chance before that are young and had injuries. It's a very strange one that we haven't done it with this one. It must be a pretty bad one.
Well, I mean, he was back in training. I was at training ground a couple of months ago, wasn't I? And he was there training on his own, albeit. But I don't know. I was surprised. I fully expected him to get a contract. Not saying I expected him to break into the team, but Rovers tend to give people a contract and look after them, to be fair. And I thought that might be what happened in this case. I'm a little disappointed from a couple of aspects, really. Might be him. Be him. But
there's been a few comments. I won't show them all, but a lot of people in the comments saying about how this one could come to bite us. You don't know. You know, we've got to trust the club in this case. So let's talk about the scholars. There was one that was linked to Arsenal, and he's signed on. Does that mean that he's got a very small release clause in there as well?
I think all agents would be daft if they haven't followed the Ash Phillips model, wouldn't they? You've got the club by the short and curlies, so they either don't re-sign you and they get minimal compensation now, or they'd say, right, well, do you know what? We've got another couple of years to work at this player and get him in and around the squad and either up our compensation or... So I also think that what it does do is puts the power completely in the players' position, but in the sense of they can turn around and say, well, you're telling me there's a pathway here. That's the reason I'm staying. Prove it. So it must put a bit of pressure on the manager to get him in and around the squad as well. But we've got another couple of years to work at him, haven't we? So, yeah. Exactly.
So before we start going through the squad of who we think is going to leave out of the people that, you know, still have contracts with us, we had quite a few out on loan this year. Do you have a bit of a loan review?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into them all because we had a lot of youngsters go out on shorter term loans and things like that. I'm mainly going to focus on the first team and just dip into the 21s. But Jake Garrett obviously went on 2 loans, so Jake Garrett's 21 now. Somebody who people thought should be in and around the first team this year. He had a loan of first away at Bristol Rovers, which we discussed previously, wasn't that successful. He then went on loan to Tranmere and had a better loan, to be fair to him. Featured a lot more, but still, I think not as much as we would like. The comments from most of the Tranmere fans are, do you know what? We'd like to have you back next year. But it's not like, oh, you made an absolutely outstanding contribution. He seems to have got himself in the team quite early on, but then he's dropped out and has struggled to get his place back in. So there's a good period of time from the last couple of months of the season until the last game. He's not got back in the team. So he's not been, again, somebody I would have expected would be going on loan and nailed on to start. And he's not done it. So I don't think that's been that successful for Jake Garrett, if I'm being honest. The only way that the 2 loans could have been successful for him, and actually for the others that I'll go on to in a minute, is we don't know them personally. Maybe they think they've cracked it and they've made it and they should be in the first team. So actually sending them on loan, it reignites that hunger and just tells them, you're not quite where you think you are, and they come back reinvigorated and ready to learn, then it's been successful. If the point was to send them on loan, ready to have them back in the first team now, I don't think any of them have been that successful. Conor O'Riordan obviously went on loan to Cambridge and barely played a minute. He's then gone back on loan to Crewe for the back end of the season, and he's played pretty much every minute. He's scored a few goals. The one interesting thing with Conor O'Riordan here is Crewe play 3 at the back, and he's played every single minute near enough then. So as a wide centre-half, we've seen him play for us at right back. He's come on, looks pretty decent on the ball, looked very comfortable. I remember him coming on at Birmingham late on in the game. Trusted him to come on and play, looked comfortable, looked quite quick. I think there's something there to work with. The club really rate him in terms of his physical data and the way he's been performing. So the fact he's had the back end of the season on loan back at Crewe is great, but potentially a bit worrying that they feel he can. Well, I'm not saying they do, but the fact he couldn't get in a 4-man defence, can get in a 3-man defence, maybe tells us where he's at right now. Maybe he's going to get another loan. We've obviously talked about Jack Vale. I think when we move into the 21s, I've talked about Jake Batty. Leo Duru's the other one I wanted to really mention. So Leo Duru, somebody who started the season with us, played obviously at the Dingle Dome, came on, really highly rated. He's managed to get himself in and around the US men's national team, their 20s squad. Went on loan to Barrow for the back end of the season and did really, really well. They really rated him. Played on the right-hand side of midfield a lot, similar to Jake Batty, mainly focused on him getting forward, full of energy. They absolutely loved him. Then got an injury towards the end of the season, so he's missed the back end of the season. But he was playing every minute of it before then. So I think he's somebody who they'll come in and reevaluate, but then potentially might go out the door. We've also seen Christy Montgomery had a little loan at Chorley at some point. That worked for him. Matty Litherland's got a new contract. Matty's been on loan at Curzon Ashton. We've had Yusik Mafumbe, a few people have asked, came in at the same time as obviously Pape Gay. Went to Belgium to get some minutes. Hasn't played a single minute through injury. So it's not just our department, Mike. But then a lot of the youngsters have been and had what I would call men's football loans. It's not so much about the quality. And the one that I think stood out for me, so they've all had one, Brandon Powell, Solomon Honor, Harrison Wood, Tom Hitchenson. They've all had a loan, Charlie Olsen, all those that are mentioned around the first team, I think they'll come in and go away with pre-season and they'll judge where they're at. They're all 18, 19. The one I would say is James Edmondson. So James Edmondson's been talked about for a while. I think, did he get our youngest goal scorer when he scored at Harrogate? Might be wrong in that, but I think he's certainly one of. Been very, very highly rated all the way through the academy. Went on loan to Macclesfield, managed by the one and only Robbie Savage, and absolutely tore it apart. I then saw him. I'd seen him previously in the 21s. He's gone on loan. I've seen bits of the clips, but then I saw him play for the 21s against Fulham when he's returned from his loan. And he just looked, when a first team player drops into that 21s, he looked a man. He looked a cut above. He looked like, do you know what? I can handle this. And Fulham had a good team, to be fair. He reminded me of Jake Batty in the sense of when I've seen Jake Batty, he's only 20, but he's looked, I'm ready for the next level. Whether that level is the first team, I don't think that's the right thing yet, but he needs a league loan for me. He needs to be in and around pre-season and get himself on loan in the league. And I'd say the same with Jake Batty. If they can get Jake Batty to sign that deal, he's only 20, just gone. Get him on a 3-year deal, get him in and around the first team for pre-season and get him on loan. I think the same applies for them. But I think there's some exciting youngsters who are getting a taste of men's football and are coming back better for it. So, yeah. I think the loans for us have worked to an extent because the people have sunk or swum. But the ones that I would have said would really do well, Garrett or Reardon, probably even Vale, to be fair, up in Scotland to a lesser extent, and Batty, Markanday, it's not worked out for some of them. So I think it's also a bit of a reminder for our fan base that actually some of these players are not quite as good as we think they are. And we had the same with John Buckley last year, didn't we? We thought he would go to another team and just walk in their team. And it's not always the case. So, yeah.
No, cheers for that review. I think everyone appreciates that because it's very difficult to keep up with Rovers loan players going out. And obviously you hear little things through the social media, but it's very hard to actually keep in touch with it. So we do appreciate that, Mark. I think that, you know, when we're looking at these names, I think you're absolutely spot on with what you're saying. You know, we expect some of these players that we rate highly to go out and do better. But there's a lot of footballers out there. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and it's who's got the biggest teeth. And to be honest, I thought Garrett would do more. O'Riordan, is he a bit of a soft touch mentally? I don't know. But I heard a few things that he struggled, and that's why when he went back to Crewe, he did better because he actually just felt more comfortable in that situation. But, you know, he's a big lad and, you know, he can play football. So he's someone that I am excited about. I think Garrett will go. I think that we saw him as, you know, Travis 2.0. But I think Garrett will be gone come next year. I don't think he'll be alone. I think they'll just look to get rid because I don't think he's necessarily done enough. And if you go in and out to a lesser club, which apparently he pushed for, and it didn't work out, it's not a good look. I think O'Riordan is going to be fine. Duru, you know, we've had a couple of people talking about Duru, you know, not looking too bad when he came on against Burnley away. That's DC saying that. I think he's someone that could come in and do a really good job, but is there space for him? So I'm not massively excited about getting Garrett back. And obviously, O'Riordan, I think, will go straight back out. So let's talk about the actual current squad now. A lot's going to change. A lot's going to change between now and next season. There's going to be a lot of people leave and a lot of people go. Now, a lot of people leave and a lot of people come in. Now, the people coming in, we can speculate all along, but like we said before the recording, it's going to be someone absolutely random from a random league that's going to get signed up. So we can't speculate. We just don't know. So let's talk about who we think might leave. From a goalkeeping point of view, we now have 2 goalkeepers that believe that they should be number 1. There's only one shirt. I think most people now believe that Toth is the future, and they would more likely go with Toth. So what do you think that means for pairs?
I don't think they'll both be at the club come the end of August. I think whichever one starts the season, the other one will want to leave. I can see nothing other than that being Toth. I think Toth will start the season. I think he deserves to start the season. When we did our poll, I actually thought Pears, to be fair, should go in our team of the season because everything in the body of work he's had. But if you're asking me which was the better individual from the bits you've seen, it's Toth. You know, if we're like reports are led to believe, then we actually potentially are going to pay more for Toth than we ever did for Thomas Kaminski. We're not doing that if we don't want him to be number one. They've done a lot of research into him and he looks decent. I think he will be number one going into the season. He might not get the number one physically, the shirt, but that would be a big moment if he did in the middle of June, I think that is. But I think Pears will go. I don't think you can then just rely on Michalski for backup. And actually, for a goalkeeper, you know, you're better placed than me, Mike. But do you want a young goalkeeper sat around? I would say probably not. You probably want them on loan. I think that's what we've kind of used Jordan Eastham as before, the one when you need a third or fourth, but you don't think they're your most highly rated. I think we've used him a little bit as that extra person. I think Michalski needs to go on loan. He's in the England youth team. He's looking like a real potential. Get him out on loan for me. So I think we're going to have to bring two keepers in. Certainly one, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The goalkeeping department, going back to me liking American football and quarterbacks, they have the quarterback room where you normally have your starter, you normally have a grey beard who's very experienced, and then you have some youngster that's the third string. And I like the same for goalkeepers. You have the person who you believe is your future, the one that's going to take you forward in goal. And then you have someone that's quite experienced, mid to late 30s, maybe looking to start a coaching career, coming in as the backup, help. You know, they're not too bothered necessarily about playing. They just really want to help that first team keeper, and then have someone young behind them that's in and around the first team squad for training, but obviously drops down to the younger setups as well, and then obviously some go out on loan. So yeah, I completely agree. I'd just like to see someone come in that is experienced, and that will help Toth. Who that is, I don't know, but I do think Pears will be one to go. I think there's some value there. What the value is, I don't know, but you know, when you're hearing things about the fact that Man United are looking at him, which I think was ridiculous and was never true. But there will be some clubs that will take Pears because last year he put some good stuff out there. You know, he could really go to some clubs and say, "This is what I did," and some mugs will take him. So fine, I can have him. So moving on to the defensive department, the first one I'm going to bring up is Scott Wharton. Obviously been injured. What do you think the future is with him?
I hope Scott Wharton comes back in time for pre-season. I think it's a big worry when someone, did he snap his Achilles that time at Brentford? And then he's done, I believe, all the ligaments in his knee that he can possibly do, plus other damage. And it was, what was it, March last year? And he's been in training, hasn't he? But it's a big pre-season for Scott Wharton, I think. I hope Scott Wharton comes back and is in a position to challenge for a first-team place. But I think he's done incredibly well to recover from two bad injuries as much as he has at the moment. I think as a club, going into next season, relying on him, tricky. It is tricky. I think bringing Danny Barton is a very wise move. Maybe you leave this one a bit later to see how he is. But I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for Scott Wharton to come back. I hope he does, absolutely. But I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for him to come back from those injuries.
Exactly. I can imagine a loan move for him. It's not unknown for more experienced players to get loans down to the lesser levels to rebuild themselves mentally, physically. I can really see that. I can see them having a good look at him. You know, is there something there? Is he strong? Is he fit? You know, my thoughts on the strength and conditioning department at this club at the moment. But I can imagine him getting some minutes with the second team. And I can imagine maybe having a loan until Christmas because we can't afford to carry a player that isn't ready. So I think if he's not ready, he'll go out on loan somewhere. It could be League Two level. just to get some minutes and get himself going again. And then I think they'll then make a decision on him. It's a shame. It's a shame. Blackburn lads, I'd love it to work out. There was times where he massively frustrated me and I thought he was quite a liability. But there was times where he was really, really solid. It's just really strange because he's the forgotten man, and it's such a shame because it's not his fault. But yeah, I can imagine him getting a loan between start of the season and Christmas if he's not quite ready. The next one on the list I was going to talk about is Harry Pickering. There's a few people mentioning in the comments that they might sell Harry Pickering. What's your thoughts?
I personally think Harry Pickering's the best left back we had at the club last year. I think defensively, I think the fact that he slots in when we move to 3 at the back, whether that's a tactical decision in game, whether it's the fact that we set up that way to start with. I think people need to remember how good he was early on last season. We were talking about Harry Pickering the season before being a 7 out of 10, but struggling against the really, really good wingers, and then that stopped. He was never less than a 7 out of 10. And actually, he was performing above that. Bad injury. But I think Harry Pickering, with Yuri Ribeiro as backup, and Harry Pickering provides backup for centre-half if needed. He's played there in a 2-man centre-half. I think you'd be crazy to sell him. Unless people are coming in with crazy figures. Don't get me wrong. I would love us to bring Owen Beck back. Absolutely. Maybe that's a possibility. And if that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, maybe. But I think Harry Pickering at 26, is a really good left back. And I think I think people have forgotten how well he was playing. I completely agree. Yeah. Callum, absolutely agree.
So Harley Johnson just said, I think we really missed him. I honestly think he was our best and most important player at the start of the season, and Callum Robinson's just finished that off with, I never understand what happened to Pickering's set piece ability. He used to be so good at Crewe. I think Pickering's with us next year. I don't think he is someone that we would get rid of. I think he is the future at left back. I think we've got left back and right back pretty well sorted now. If you had Pickering on the left and Britton on the right, I am absolutely happy with that. There's one last defender, stroke midfielder, stroke right winger, stroke left back, whatever you want to put him, and that is Joe Rankin Costello, JRC. Look in the comments right now, there's quite a lot of people just done with JRC. I want to see him go. I've always said he's a great utility player to have on. We said last year, the thing is with JRC, he needs to actually nail down a proper position. As much as you think you can play in multiple positions, as a coach, you're going to keep dotting you around. He needs to find a position that's his, go for it and get it. And he hasn't done that. Is it time to see if what the market dictates for JRC and maybe try and cash in?
I was surprised by fans' reaction to him in a few games towards the end of the season. I thought that he had enough credit in the bank. I think you're right. He's a victim of playing a few positions. He's somebody who's great on the bench. What I think he's really struggled with is not playing regularly. I don't know whether that's mentally, whether that's physically, or a combination. I think he's really struggled with not being that first name on the team sheet, or certainly one of the, in the starting 11. He did look to shadow of himself towards the end of last season, didn't he? If I was advising JRC, if I'm his agent, I'd be saying you need to go somewhere else. You're 25, you're nearly 26. Go and get yourself established somewhere now. If I'm advising Blackburn Rovers as somebody who can play at every position on the pitch, can probably do a job in the nets, I'm going to keep him around because I don't think the value that you're bringing in for him right now replaces that. But I think for him, it's probably time because I don't see him displacing anybody in the team.
No, and like my friend Mr. Boyce, the bold man himself, he said, what would we get for him? 500,000? Could we get better? I don't think we could. I think the thing I really like about JRC is his size and strength as well. He's willing to put himself about. when he needs to, and he can grab a game when he needs, But like you said, in that Huddersfield game, he puts himself into really weird situations where he will then have this amazing game, but it's not his job to do that. I agree with what you're saying. I think for his career, he needs to nail down a position and go somewhere and just do that. I would be gutted to see him go. I'm a JRC fan, not as a starter, but just as a man, as a player around the squad. When I've seen him come on, I feel like he does do a job. Whether the job is good enough, I don't know. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I would like to keep him, but I think he'll be one of the ones to go. Another one that might go moving into the midfielders is John Buckley. And like Steve says here, JRC and Buckley being left out at the end of the season speaks volumes of what the manager wants. And that is true. John Buckley, I said I was a fan of JRC. You've been previously a fan of John Buckley. I think we've had enough of John Buckley not really pushing on now, haven't we?
Yeah, and John Buckley, I said from day one that he came into the first team, he had something that you can't teach people. He just found, he was always in space. He always seemed to have time on the ball. And I came back to it last season when he came back into the squad. We were away at Cardiff, which was a horrific experience. But he came back into the squad that day and found himself, it looked easy for him. And sometimes he makes the game look easy, but he doesn't grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Now, not everybody can do that, but there was spells last season where he had a run of games, or he had a chance to have a run of games, and he didn't make that shirt his own. And I think, again, if I'm advising John Buckley, he's 26 in October, I'd be advising him to go and play. And I think he probably wants to do now. It's a massive shame, but I don't see him getting in ahead of Travis or Tronstad anytime soon. And he's not somebody who's making an impact off the bench. So I think for him, he probably needs to move. For us, if Travis or Tronstad get injured, I'm more than happy with him coming into the team. So I'd keep him around for that sense. But yeah, I think if you're looking at would you keep him around ahead of Forshaw, if that was the debate, then yes. But no, I don't think that's the right thing for John Buckley.
Well, it's amazing how light we are in that midfield. I mean, there's only two positions for midfield right now because we're playing, attacking wingers. And we don't know, what's going to happen with our formation going forward. We do assume there's going to be the flat back four, two centre mids, your two wingers, the guy in the hole, and then the guy up front. But I think we're going to look to upgrade in that area. I think out of everyone in that centre midfield role, the only ones that are safe are Travis and Tronstad. You've got Buckley, I think will go. You've got obviously Forshaw that's already left. Cantwell is listed here as a centre mid. He's not really a centre mid. He plays a bit more attacking than that. And Vyman's listed as centre mid. Well, he plays more attacking than that. So really, centre mid, you've only got Travis and Tronstad, haven't you? If you're getting rid of JRC and Buckley. And I do think that they are going to be looking to upgrade in that area.
Yeah, I think they've talked a lot about the profile of player that they want in the squad and the options. Previously, we talked last season about it being between Travis and Garrett, or Travis and Baker, and then being between Tronstad and Buckley. I don't think that's the way we will go into this year. I don't think we'll look for like swaps. I think we'll look for different options. And I think the one thing that's quite clearly missing in that midfield is somebody full of legs, full of energy, who can get up and down. And I think that's the profile of player they will go for. And that's not John Buckley. That's not JRC. That's not Adam Forshaw. No. And I think that's where we're going with this. I think we're looking for a profile of player that's big and strong. Yeah.
Well, to actually go back to the goalkeepers and the defenders, I think goalkeeper, you probably, as much as it's mad to say, over the last couple of years, we're probably not going to look to upgrade in that goalkeeper department now. No. I think there might be a bit of trading involved with, one of them leaving and someone else necessarily coming in. But if you just kept it at, Toth and pairs, I think the manager would be more than happy with that. Defensively, I think we're okay. I think as much as I would like to upgrade, I don't think it's necessarily a position of need right now.
I'm,
to others. But I think
I'm a little bit on the
midfield
fence.
is.
I think
You think?
I do think we need a left-hand sided centre half with a bit of pace.
So
I think we're lacking the pace as well.
Well, let's jump back into the defenders then. And obviously, people put their comments in what you think. So, centre back, we have Carter, Hyam, Bart, and maybe Scott Wharton. So, in fact, yeah, when I've listed them out there, unless Pickering comes into that left centre back, actually, yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think we are actually light at centre back. So yeah, we could potentially do with actually an extra centre back there, but I think definitely midfield is what he's going to really look into because we've only got two there. Going into now, jumping to the forward positions. So let's assume Tyrhys Dolan's gone. Hedges has signed a deal. I'm seeing some comments that. Sorry, he's been extended. There's some people saying that Hedges may have only been extended to sell him. Do you think he's going to be on the chopping block?
No. I think Hedges, 29, I think he's going to be in and around the team.
Yeah, I think so too. And looking at the other wingers, you do have Cantwell. Cantwell was a polarising figure. And there was times where I was frustrated with him. There was times where he showed glimpses very similar to the Dolan situation with me. Cantwell's going to be with us, isn't he?
I think so. I think that the reason that Cantwell wouldn't be with us is if he has an honest conversation with Ismail and actually we're talking about you're not starting or you're not. I think the way I could see it going where he doesn't end up with us is a little bit similar to Thomason and with Dak. And I know these are your qualities, but I need my number 10 to be doing this, this, and this. And then it becomes a position he can't play. But I think in the number 10 for me, I think it's between Cantwell. I think we're light there. I think they will look to do that. Yeah, we've got Hashi that can do a job. But I to be fair, Vyman could do that. That might be what they're looking. But I think in an Ismail team where he's talking about high pressing and loads of energy, we haven't got I know this sounds ridiculous, but a Smodics in terms of when we signed Smodics, that was for his energy and pressing, wasn't it, as a number 10? We haven't got that profile of player, so I think they'll look to do that. I think if you look at the right-hand side, if we say Hedges, for argument's sake, could play on the right-hand side, then we've only him, really. If we're saying he plays on the left, then we've got him and Cogbo. We've nobody on the right, have we? So we are light, very light in those forward areas, and that's where they cost big money.
No, exactly. I do think we are going to be looking in that position once again. I think Gay and Ohashi, well, Gay was one of the ones where some people, another polarising striker, once again, we seem to have all these players where there's people that say they're brilliant, people that say they're awful, and there's, us straight down the middle where we call it as we see it. Ohashi's desperate to have his rest and then have a pre-season, but he's someone that fits the mould now. Cogbo, he's obviously someone that he's got a lot of energy, very raw. I think I said his name right this time.
You did.
I did, yeah. Round of applause for me. I'm learning, people. I'm learning.
Do you know what, Milo? I don't want you to get his name right. I want my mate Augustus. That's all I want. I want you to get
my
a
mate
t-shirt.
Augustus, then.
My mate Augustus, yeah. I'm going to make you one.
Fair play. But I mean, he's only 25. He's only 25. He's raw, but you could tell he's got that thing about him, which he's going to be with us next year. There's one player that I really want to talk about, and it is Harry Leonard. And I think he has a future with us. I'm very concerned about his injuries. I don't think he'll be with us next year. I think he'll be out on loan. I just hope it works out for him, because there is something about Harry Leonard with his instincts, his positioning, everything, knowing when to press, all of this. You can just tell that is a player, that is someone, and he actually fits into the new manager's regime and this new project that we've now started. He fits into it. Is he the most pacey? No, but he's intelligent with what he does. He's got a little bit of quickness and a little bit of instinct. And I do think that he has a future with us. Do you think he needs a positive loan now?
I do. I think I'd be sceptical about doing it straight away. I think I'd want to see from a protective point of view that his injury's okay and that he's fit and he's ready to go and play games. He's taken a massive step backwards, hasn't he, in John Eustace's time, injury-wise. But even performances, he wasn't performing at the level he was under Thomason, who showed great faith in him. He started the season 2 years ago under Thomason, as did Markanday. I think you're absolutely 100% though. In terms of his finishing, he generally hits the target when he's got a chance. I remember him playing last season and not playing very often. He came on against Stoke. He had a chance. He came on in the next couple of games. He always gets a chance, even if he's on the pitch for 10 minutes. But I think what is really underrated is what you've said there, and we've picked up on it a few times, is his pressing. He's so intelligent. And I actually think that's something that might just mean he stays around the squad. Because I think if he makes an impression in pre-season, they'll see how intelligent he is with that. He might well stick around because forwards cost a lot of money. And if he's doing a decent job and he's another option, and we've got a backup for Ohashi in sense of a plan B with Gay, but we haven't got a backup for Ohashi. Actually, when we're talking about players needing to be fresh and the amount of effort that Ohashi is going to be putting into these games, I could just see Harry Leonard coming right back into the fold, actually.
Yeah, he's a talent. He's only 21. He's got loads about him. I was lucky enough to interview him, on Rovers Chat, and we had a chat with him. And he seems a really nice, positive, lad. He was a little bit slight, but he's only young. But sometimes being slight doesn't mean that you're weak. You know, he like you said, he started against West Brom, got a couple of goals. He seemed really strong. Best 10 West said he's not keen on Leonard. Come back into the comments, mate. Tell us why, because I feel like he's someone that, he's showing the instincts. Harley Johnson is going to be at Vale 2.0 or the next Stansfield. I can't call it. But Steve says could see Leonard developing more into VI style of play, just not a Eustace player. Yeah. You can tell the way he plays. He's got that high energy, high intensity. My only concern now is the injuries he had was back injuries. And I believe it was lower back injuries. And that can cause a lot of hamstring problems and things like that because, it's something I am a little bit concerned about. So I just want us to make sure we do things properly with him because obviously we rushed him. He got injured again. Again, we're talking about the strength and conditioning. Don't get me started. And, I just want to make sure we do this properly. Like get him the right help because, like you said, strikers are extremely expensive. And when you've got a young English forwards coming through your ranks, that the club means a lot to him. And he has these traits which you can't teach, that you need to look after him, and he's one that I think is the future for us.
I completely agree, and I agree with the comment that I think he's more. Had it been Eustace the manager now, I'd have been saying something different. Actually, I would have been saying I think he needs a loan. But do you know what? Going back to JRC slightly, he could well fit into this style of football. I know he wasn't even on the bench, but if you go back to when JRC was good, it was under Thomason when he came in as an inverted right back. Hate that phrase, but yeah, he did. But actually, I don't think he'll do that under Ismail. But what we have seen was the Sheffield Wednesday crazy, just, let's go all out for it. That's where JRC thrives. Can you imagine JRC coming off the bench when we need a goal? I could see him really fitting into that chaos football that we're going to be employing in the last 15 minutes of games when we need a... Whereas Eustace didn't want that. Eustace wanted somebody controlled who would do his job and he could send him on the pitch and know what he was going to do. JRC would be at right back in theory and will be popping up on the left wing. So, yeah.
Like Steve Bowman just said, the weird thing with JRC is he excels when he plays in a more obscure position. Play him in midfield and he'll struggle. Play him as a goalkeeper and he'll somehow score a hat-trick. Absolutely correct. That's the kind of player he is. Like you say, he does love the chaos.
I just think when you're needing a goal and you think, do you know what, we just need to change the feel of the game, that's when I bring JRC on. And I'd stick him somewhere that if they've just got one up front and they're not attacking, that's when you put him at right back, not to play him at right back because you think he'll sort himself out from there, and nobody will pick him up. Yeah.
Well, that's basically the first team squads, the ones that I've picked out that I think potentially won't be with us. That's the list that I've written down of ones that we think potentially won't be with us are Ainsley Pears, Scott Wharton, JRC Buckley and Garrett. So that's 5 players that, would need replacing. Do we think that fits into kind of where the club's going to be getting, these new players in, new goalkeeper, a new centre-back, a couple of midfielders? Is that the way you can see where we need to start getting these new signings?
I think if nobody leaves from now, other than the ones that we already have, I think they need to go and sign at least one winger. For me, they need 2. I think they will be bringing in at least one midfielder who will be a bit of a powerhouse. And I think they will bring in a centre-half. I think that's where they're targeting at the minute. I fully, though, expect Pears to leave. You've got to replace him. Personally, I think we need 2, but you had to replace him. And then I think it will be replacements from there. So, yeah. I think they will probably look to fill at least one of those forward positions with a loan. I think that's where you dip into the loan market, because the quality of player that you can sign is not the quality of player that you can get on loan. I think you can overachieve in that sense. Going and getting I know it didn't work, but a Cozy Ajubi, somebody young, fast, highly rated from the Premier League. Ben Doak at Middlesbrough. I think that is something that you couldn't go and just sign necessarily. So I think it would be daft not to do that, but I still think we need to sign one as well. Going into the, you look at the free transfer market, there's obviously, everyone's looking at the Premier League released, not really that realistic, but somebody like Peter is going to get loads of attention. Somebody like that would really benefit our squad, I think. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think the makeup of our squad, and actually when we are sat here at the end of August, I think when we're discussing the team, rather than it being a direct, do we want Tronstad, do we want Buckley, do we want Travis, do we want Garrett, I think we'll be looking at, right, we're playing Middlesbrough, which of the midfield 2 suits it? A little bit more akin to Gayen or Hash's conversation. Which one of them suits this game more? I think that's the way that the club will be going. I think they'll be looking for more options, different profiles. They talked about the makeup of the squad. We've not enough pace in it. We've not enough power in it. And we've not enough robustness in it. So they're the 3 words that I would expect to probably hang on our new signings strengths, if you like.
We're definitely going to see a different Blackburn Rovers next year. We're going to see a completely different profile of player, and I'm ready for it. As much as this season I believe was a success, to get 7th was great. To get us over the edge, though, you need to have an X factor, and we didn't have that X factor. When we've previously had X factors like your Schmodics and so on, we haven't built around them. And when we've had these pacey players, it's been really nice to watch and have that play, but then we haven't had the stuff around them to have the sensible. If we can mix the sensible play with the pacey play, I think we could really have something to build on. Now, you've kind of started to answer a question about loans, and before we finish, because we're now getting close to the end of the podcast now, is when it comes to loans, the one loan that was a success was Owen Beck. And a lot of people have discussed about, well, if we can get him back, it'd be a great signing. He's not coming back, is he?
Well, I mean, he does live opposite me at the moment, and I have seen him in Tesco.
Go knock on his door. Go knock on his door and see if he'll come over and have a quick and just let us know what's going on.
Yeah, well, to be honest,
we'll wait.
Not because I'm the most boring person in the world, I am one of them, but this isn't the actual reason. I have my daughter on certain days of the week, whatnot, so I tend to go in Tesco after work, which is obviously a similar time, on a Tuesday evening, Mike. And it just so happens that Owen Beck seems to do his shopping at the same time. I haven't seen him for a couple of weeks. If I see him this week, I'll try and ask him. We'll see what he says. But yeah, in that's half tongue in cheek, half not, believe it or not. But yeah, he is still around. So I don't know. Maybe he likes the area. There's a lovely spot. Maybe he wants to come back. But I think if he does come back, I think he'll find himself on the left wing. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'd like that.
Well, no, it'd be a fantastic signing. I think if we had the money, because I don't know how much he'd go for. I mean, to be honest, it might only be a couple of million to prize him away. I don't think it'd be a hell of a lot. I think it's more the suitors. There's going to be better suitors than us that would probably prize him away, because he did impress. And when you've got someone that can play left back and play left wing, there's a lot of people that would want a player like that, especially considering I know he's Welsh, but he would be on that homegrown as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing from our perspective that probably dictates it as much as anything, though, is we've got 2 left backs. We only have a finite amount of money, whatever. We're not getting to that right now. But would you want to spend it there? You would say it's not a priority position. If they see him as a left winger, what does that say for Cardboard? I just think that they've only a finite amount of funds and they will look to spend it elsewhere. I think will be the bigger thing. I think they possibly could if he was, if we had a gaping hole left back and that was the only position, might be a different story. But I just think I can't see them spending the little funds that they will spend on another left back.
Well, apparently you're out here living on Millionaires Row.
Absolutely
You saw these paid ads coming through. Mark, why are you getting all the money?
Yeah, sorry. Not Millionaires Row, believe it or not. He's only Liverpool's youth team. Leave him alone.
Yeah. But going actually back to Mr. Boyce making his comments, we need to use the loan market better this season. And to finish off the pod, I do think we need to talk about that. We've not been successful enough over the last few years. We've had some great ones.
No, we haven't.
And they've ended up like we fell in love with them and stuff, but they're not hitting every single time. And they can't hit every single time. I get that. But every loan player that comes through, I want them to add something. And we've had too many where they've just come and not done anything. They've just been mere players. I mean, I'm not going to go through moaning about all of them again, but there was so many of them recently where I'm just shaking my head thinking, why have we got them? They've done nothing.
Yeah, I've looked into this a little bit, and I think I'm going to park last season's loan a little bit. I think they were done in a different way. What I would say is our loans previously, if you look at the likes of Cozy Ajubi, I think we're shopping in a different loan market to everybody else. We're shopping in a loan market where we don't pay a big loan fee, and therefore we're taking more of a gamble with the players. So if you think of our under-21 squad, for example, we are shopping in the Igor Tijons rather than the Harry Leonards from the Premier League teams. The problem with that is it might work. It might be a spectacular failure. The one other thing I would add to that is we could have signed Jadon Dans and we were close to doing, and he hasn't played a single minute for Middlesbrough because of injury. So it isn't always guaranteed. You also look down the opposite side of the Pennines at Sheffield United. Oh no, they've permanently signed Tom Cannon, but he's gone for big money in his loans and not really done it. So not all loans are successful in the Championship. I think if you look at them, the stats of it are probably quite poor in terms of what are. Our loans that tend to work tend to be defenders. Van Heck, Hill, Branthwaite, even to an extent. Adebayo, I thought was outstanding. We'll not talk about Michael Keane. Owen Beck. They tend to be the ones that have done really well. So, yeah, maybe that's where we need to be heading.
Well, we've now got different people higher up that might have different links, different contacts to different clubs. And I'm hoping then, because we had this nice little link with Liverpool, now we've got this link with Brighton. I want us to now start getting some links with some bigger clubs like Man City, your Liverpools, the ones that are relatively local that might send their players to us. And we can advertise to them and say, look, we've played youth players. We've played people's players. Why can't, send them to us? and hopefully they won't ask for much of a wage, us to pay much of their wages, because their youth are going to be on ridiculous. But I just want us to try and be that little bit more intelligent with how we're doing things.
I think, to be fair to the club, I mean, we have had Howard Bellis and Adebayo before, but I think, to be fair to the club, the likes of Man City and Man United and even Liverpool, really, I think they ask for quite big loan fees. Chelsea, I know, do. I think they see it as a bit of a business, don't they? You know, if they've got a youth player and they can get £1 million for 4 seasons for him and then sell him, it's part of football's business, I'm afraid. They are youth players, but they are commodities and they're assets that they milk a little bit.
No, exactly. Right, just before we go, I did put into the chat if anyone has any questions. They do have to be quick, because we did want to keep this under. Well, I actually said to Mark, I said, this is probably only going to take 45 minutes to an hour
You've
today.
said that every week.
I've said it every week, but we just love talking Rovers, and we can't help it. So we're now at an hour and 20. We're going to go to an hour and a half. So we've got 10 minutes just to finish off with some questions. So Steve said, season tickets go back on sale tomorrow. If we signed the player tomorrow to entice more to buy season tickets, who would it be? Be realistic. Genuinely, I don't know, because I just don't think we can sign anyone that would entice. I think the biggest signing we've made this season for a name was Cantwell. You know, I genuinely couldn't think of anyone that we could sign that would be realistic. No,
I mean, I think in terms of our fan base, will Kaminsky reignite things? But I don't think we need him at the minute. I think we've got to. I think you'd be talking about exciting loan players potentially. I mean, I'd be excited if we went and signed Poku. I think that'd be a great move. But I don't think it'd capture the massive imagination. I think you'd be talking about somebody coming who's really, really highly rated, wouldn't you? And I can't really see that.
No, we're going to be really sensible, aren't we?
Sorry, yeah. Although, talking of which, of course,
Dino Baggio.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Matt. I'm going to have to highlight this comment though. Do you think Tyjon will step up next season? You look at players like Chris Rigg. I'm with him. And even Lamine Yamal.
He's lost us.
I can't answer that. No, do we think Tyjon will step up? I think it's a very important season for him and us. I think if we don't give him minutes, I would imagine we have sold him the pathway dream. So I think if he doesn't get minutes, he will be out the door one way or another, because he's playing. I know he's eligible for Poland as well, but he's playing England under 17s football, sat in dressing rooms on people on fortunes, and is a young striker who's playing in the 21s and doing well. You're telling me that Man City, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool aren't going? Tell you what, pal, just come and sit in our 21s. I think if he's not playing, then he's going to disappear.
Yeah. I mean, Harley, we are only joking. You know, we do know you're not comparing Tyjon to Lamine Yamal. Although if you see the stats of Yamal compared to Messi at the same age, it's unreal, isn't it? But Tyjon, I think we're hearing all these names, Tyjon Dury, these players that we get really excited about. We just want to see them starting to play, but because of the way football is, you don't want to play too much too young, because they're just being snapped up for next to nothing. So you want to play them just a little bit, so then you get some nice money. But then there's other bits where you're like, well, I don't want them to be too good yet, because we're just going to lose them before they get the big contracts, big contracts with us. Mark, before we finish, is there anything else you want to chat with today?
Well, I just think, since we're talking about pronunciation, I believe I have been corrected as well. It should be Igor Tyjon. So I think everyone calls him Igor Tyjon, but it's Igor Tyjon, I believe.
I'm just rubbish at pronouncing names now.
Well, do you know what?
When you get to a certain age, you can't help it.
I think we've got to start going down your route, Mike. My mate Augustus, Igor, we'll call him. I think we follow this route.
Yeah, you know, we're all
and if we need to, we'll put a little summary out there of actually what their player's name is and what we refer to them as, and we'll just give them all nicknames. Yeah. Mike, come on.
Right. Zurab Kizanishvili. It took me ages to get it. But I did get there. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned with players' names, like, I'm not being disrespectful if I say it wrong. It's just because I'm an idiot. So if anyone thinks I'm being disrespectful, because we had someone message saying it's disrespectful not to say their name, mate, I'm just an idiot. It's fine. It's okay. And they probably don't listen anyway. So what's Steve saying here? So this is an important point. Wharton was the sweet spot because he went slightly under the radar, but because of his success, our academy is now under the microscope more than ever. So this is something we have said previously, isn't it? You know, you want these players to come through because it does advertise that the club is trying to develop and we're not standing in the way. But we just need to make sure we're not putting it forward too much, because if you put it forward too much, people are just going to come and poach, exactly what Steve's saying. And that's what you don't want. You don't want to just become a feeder team for everyone above and getting a pittance for it.
No, the club are quite open and honest with the academy players. If you're coming for money, you'll find it more elsewhere. We can't even compete. We will pay what we think is fair. We have quite a set thing for first-year scholars, second-year scholars, 18s, 21s. And we don't really budge from it because there's no point us getting into this cat and mouse of, well, we'd get more at Man United. Well, yes, you would. The pathway here, though, is, and I've said this a few times, the clubs see, and the stats out there are quite crazy, is that if you play 100 league games, the percentage chance of you being a professional footballer and having a career in football changes from something like 10% to 90%. So Rovers' point to the families is, we'll get you there quicker than any of them other teams. That then flips on its head when I got Tyjon, for example. You're having that conversation. He's 1 year down the road and he's played 3 games, has he?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. We've got a long summer ahead of us. I'm not sure what next week's podcast is going to be on. There's hopefully some news that we'll have with in the Rovers ranks of contracts being signed. We'll wait and see. But there's going to be a lot of change, lots to talk about. We're going to be here near enough every week. We'll try our best to. We've got holidays, we've got families, we've got careers. So we will try our best. But Mark, until next week, hopefully we'll get some positive news on the Rovers front.
Yeah, I'd like to see Bart, Vyman, Batty all definitely confirmed. And I think we need an end to the Tyrese Dolan saga one way or another. I think he's in LA at the minute, isn't he? In Vegas, LA, one of them. So it's not going to be settled anytime soon. And I actually don't think it's going to be settled until the Premier League season's finished. And maybe even they start looking at returning to training. So I think we'll be waiting a while. But the dream is next week, we've got all of that wrapped up and we can say, right, we know where we are, where we're heading.
And then we can start to recklessly speculate who we're going to sign, what we're going to do, and we're going to take it from there. But until then, Mark, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, buddy.
And thanks to everyone that has watched us live and, your comments. We've tried to read them and get them all in as much as we can. If you haven't watched it live, put your comments down below as well. We do try to read them. Any questions for next week as well, we'll try our best to answer them all. It could be stupid questions about us because we might have some dead air. We don't know, but it's me and Mark. We can talk for days. But until then, have a good one.